thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterwards his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah.
Very good. All right. So Perez ultimately struggled in the womb and came out, even though Zerah had reached out first, right? They must have had long arms, but yeah.
Is that important later on? Because
yes.
Is
yes.
it okay?
Perez is the one who is in the lineage of Christ, the Zerah, right?
He's the first one.
Zerah is the one with the scarlet thread, but Christ comes through Perez, through the line of
Do you think he was trying to
Judah.
overtake his brother and he couldn't do it in the womb?
I'll have to ask them someday.
It's just so ironic, you know. And I think the midwife.
So when
was
you
very-
two were in the womb, what wrestling?
All right, there's Jerry and Gary, and then there was your sister. Yeah.
Yeah, twins.
She
This is
said-
a twin thing. Ask your husband. He's a twin.
She said that she was born first because I was in a hurry and was pushing her out of the way. Because I'm always a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, even in the womb,
Joe
there's,
said. Yeah.
even in the womb, there's the holy headlock, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
There it is.
All right. So, all right, go back to your sheet now. Does everybody have a sheet? We've got about 15, 20 minutes here. All right, so let's talk about the theological. You can look up all the verses here if you want to at your own leisure. There are proof texts for all of this. All right. So, the title Kinsman Redeemer is not used here. That's later in the scripture when an actual title is given to this cultural practice, but it does become codified in the law of Moses, right? And we see Kinsman Redeemer come up over and over and over again in the Old Testament. And I'm going to argue to you that Jesus is the fulfillment of the biblical and cultural office of Kinsman Redeemer. So who's your kin? Get your banjos out. Who's your kin? That's your relatives. Your kinfolk. You guys didn't watch Beverly Hillbillies?
That's your kin.
Your kinfolk?
Yes.
Yeah, your kin is your family, right? So a redeemer of one's family. All right, so Jesus is the better Judah. That's what I'm going to argue. When you read the book of Hebrews, Jesus is better than angels. Jesus is better than Moses. Jesus is better than Melchizedek, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's the fulfillment of Abel. He's the fulfillment of Jacob. He's the fulfillment of Judah, right? He's the better everything. Everything in the Old Testament, from Genesis to Malachi, points to Jesus as the fulfillment. And I'm going to give you some verses, right? All right, so what is redemption? Redemption, if I redeem something, I'm purchasing it back, right? If you go down to the pawn shop, maybe some people like pawn shops, some people hate them. But if you go down to a pawn shop and you pawn something, you can select the option that you can buy it back. You can redeem that item. Of course, it's going to cost you a little bit. Maybe Laban is running the local pawn shop, in which case it might cost you a lot to get it.
Yeah.
Get back your item, right?
You might not get that one back.
I always said that the old phrase from the theologians is Laban is a kinsman of Jacob, and Jacob was a trickster, but in Laban he found an even greater trickster, a trickster who could trick the trickster, right?
Yeah.
And the old theologian phrase is, Laban's so crooked you don't even want to kiss him on the mouth because he could steal your gold filling just by,
I thought you were going to say
just by a
small
kiss
steam.
on the mouth. Right? Yeah. All right, so anyway, so to redeem is to buy back. What is the role of the Old Testament kinsman redeemer? Well, we just read about some of the roles here. So there's a cultural role, and then later, now remember, this is some centuries before the giving of the law, which is roughly 15th century BC through Moses. Moses is not yet alive. It's going to be several generations. However, the law is written on the hearts, the scripture says. That is the difference to know what is right, what is wrong, what God expects of his creation and his creatures, and that which the devil drives us to violate, that which God expects, right? So there's a cultural role, there's a role in the law, right? It has to do with redeeming or buying back family members, kinsmen, remember? Family members who are in poverty or in extreme debt. who've lost their family land, right, and or property, have been sold into servitude. Now remember, an indentured servitude is different than what you would think of slavery, right? There's a difference between Eleazar of Damascus, who is an indentured servant. He's a member of the family in Abraham's household. Matter of fact, so much so that if Isaac is never born, if Ishmael's never born, Eleazar of Damascus, the chief steward of the household, will inherit the household's property, goods, people, the whole 9 yards, right? That's a servitude, right? Later on in the law, it's an optional thing too. If you want to, or it can be a term, later on, you release people from their term every few years, or if they want to remain permanently in the household, there's a ceremony where they pierce your ear in the side of the door. Yes, sounds great, doesn't it?
Where?
Pierce your ear into the door of the household, and then they would pull the thing out, and then you would be. That was a yeah. Well, you'd only hang there for a few seconds,
Yeah.
but that was a sign to everyone that you had voluntarily chosen to be not of blood, but by adoption into the household. But you're not kinsman blood, but you want to remain in the household, right? But also outright slavery, as Joseph's brothers and all their children are. Everything starts off good in Egypt, and they have the right king, they have the right pharaoh. But as with so much human government, when you get the wrong king, when you get the wrong pharaoh, when you get the wrong government in over a long period of time, suddenly, and there arose in Egypt a pharaoh who did not know or remember Joseph and what Joseph had done to save Egypt some generations earlier, right? And then they look around, and there's all these Hebrew, and Yahweh's been blessing them, and Israel, greater Israel, has all these children, and suddenly now they're pushing out, they're driving up the local realty prices. They're taking the jobs, right? There are these immigrant invaders. Who are these people? And nobody remembers who Joseph is. They didn't have the internet. They couldn't look it up. Who is Google? Google me, right? Says Joe. No, can't look him up. Don't remember. They're not Egyptians. Get those people out of here. Oh, wait. Why kick them out when we can use them as forced labor? And then that becomes not of a will. It's pushed upon them, and then they become true slaves, right? So a kinsman redeemer was also to redeem or buy back a member of the family who had become a slave, right? And it also is the role, as we'll see in the book of Ruth later, not just Genesis chapter 38, but the book of Ruth. A brother's line doesn't have to end, right? He can be remembered in the family, because you got to remember, part of it too is brothers carry the blood, right?
But don't the women?
You ask Jerry and you say, is his twin brother blood? And he'll say, yes, he's my blood. So what?
But didn't the women also, weren't they part of the blood too? I mean.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean,
okay.
You do carry.
But did the men always carry the better promise or the better?
Well, they are. Remember, it's a patriarchy. So while women are mentioned in critical points in history through the biblical patriarch line, primarily the thing that comes up is this father begat this son, that begat this son, that begat this son, and then you do see Tamar. A whole chapter but then Tamar is mentioned more in the scriptures. Well, why is she mentioned more in the scriptures? Because she's in the line of Christ, right?
Okay.
So women do come up, and they play an absolutely critical role. I would say, would you agree with me, that Mary plays a pretty critical role in Scripture?
That's where I was going to go to.
Absolutely.
Because, yeah, he picked the right woman.
He did, yes.
So, yeah.
He was lucky, or good choice, I should say. All right. So, all right. So, very quickly, yes. So, a brother's line didn't have to end, and this provided children and women protection for one spouse who is gone, right? All right, so now, he's a better Judah in two ways. Kinsman Redeemer, which we're going to get back to again, but I also want to mention, and that remember that Judah is the line of kings, because later when Jacob dies, he's going to give a blessing to Judah that shows the other brothers that later on throughout the generations, Judah's line is going to prevail as a lion, right? And he's going to rule over his brothers. Because remember, Judah is not the firstborn. Reuben is the firstborn. Remember when Reuben, chapter 37, tries to save Joseph, but then he walked away for some stupid reason, and then they were like, Reuben's gone. And they sell him. They don't kill him, but they sell him into slavery, which probably would have felt like worse than death, right? But Judah is the line via the patriarchal prophecy that he's the line that will eventually rule, right? So Jesus, as from Sunday morning, since we're studying the book of Revelation chapter 5, one of the many places where Jesus is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah, lion being the spirit animal, as they would say nowadays, or the symbol of the house of Judah, lion meaning the king of, as if you were a Disney aficionado and you like the Lion King, and he holds up.
Simba.
That
That was a great movie.
I don't know Swahili or whatever that language was. Sorry. All right. Somebody used to sing that song. They'd say, Pennsylvania! Konnichiwa, which is a Japanese word for something. Somebody made up a whole song just using other languages. That's a sidebar. Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, which, of course, David is of Judah's line. Solomon, Jesse, all of the Judah's line, of course, Jesse's stump, Jesse's tree, the shoot of Jesse's stump. All of these are titles for the Messiah, the Zerah, the seed, the offspring of Abraham through the patriarchal line, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, Jesus. Go to Matthew, go to Luke, and there's genealogies, and bing, 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 bing. So-and-so begat so-and-so, begat so-and-so. And yes, Tamar is mentioned in one of the, thus fulfilling this whole thing of kinsman redeemer. All right, so Jesus is the fulfillment of Judah's line, right? Remember when it was promised to David that the offspring, the Zerah, would also be a king whose throne was eternal? Well, how does a king's throne become eternal when David is a sinner and David dies? Solomon is a sinner and Solomon dies. Someone is going to have to break the chain of sin, death, and the devil. That's what Jesus does, right? So he's the better Judah, he's the better David, he's the better Solomon, and yes, he has three primary roles. Kinsman Redeemer would be a minor, lesser role, but prophet, priest, and king. Perhaps you remember that. Hopefully you were taught that in your catechism days, right?
Yeah.
Moses is the prophet, but Deuteronomy chapter 18 predicts a prophet who will come from your kinsmen, from your people, who will be the greatest prophet, a better Moses. He's the better Aaron. Aaron is the priestly line of the tribe of Levi. You got Judah, you got Levi, right? Moses is a Levite. Aaron is a Levite. But Jesus is the better Aaron. Why? Because Aaron sinned. He even made the golden calf, right? Jesus does not point anyone away from the Father. He is the way, the truth, and the life through the Father. Yes?
I have a question. Remember when we talked about way back under Jacob, and now when you get to Judah, Judah came from Leah. Was she the line coming down? I thought it was Rachel.
Well, Rachel carries Joseph, but Leah, the first wife, not by Jacob's choosing, because remember Laban tricked, right? Leah becomes the chosen line for Christ.
Okay.
The Father chooses Leah.
And that's why it's
because Leah is despised. Remember, think about everything. Jesus is the fulfillment of everything. Jesus is despised. Jesus is rejected. Leah is despised. Leah is rejected.
Okay.
Everything is crystallized. Every little detail that we don't even often see it, but it all points to Jesus as fulfilling something, right? So, I mean, if the world had its choice, Rachel's the desired one. Rachel's the famous one. She's the hot chick. You know,
Okay.
if she was in social media star today, she'd probably have 1 million followers on maybe 1 billion followers on social. And the world would love Rachel, and they would hate Leah. Leah's not the beautiful one. She's the one that she didn't have a choice in the matter. The father's just like, you're doing this, you know. Get in the tent right now, you know. So it was all thrust upon her. And so even as she's in this relationship that she didn't ask for, she's in competition with her sister because her husband is only interested in her sister. Which, by the way, I would think that would not engender a lot of true love and feelings between the two sisters, and we know there was conflict there. We talked about that earlier when we were studying that section. So yes, though Jacob chooses Rachel, God chooses Leah.
Okay.
And so he blesses Leah because of her faithfulness, and she's willing to suffer, right? And that is a type of Christ, if you will, in that, right? So then it goes Jacob, Leah, Judah, Tamar, who is also going to suffer. Did she ask for to be in error? No. She's got a bum husband, right? God kills him. Then Onan is put into that position. He's a bum too. God strikes him down. Now she might have had a complex after all that had happened to her. And then she's promised the third son, and her father-in-law thinks she's cursed and despises her, right? So she might have, and so God chooses this. He works through the sin, right? The wages of sin is death. It's all horrific, but God works through all of this in the fullness of time, the scripture says. So
That makes more sense now since you did that. And we're getting farther into it.
She could be a pre-Black Widow.
Yeah.
She wasn't married.
Oh yeah. No, the fault was not hers. It was the guy's fault. All right. So prophet, priest, and king. He's the better Moses. He's the better Aaron. He's the better David. Well, what's the problem with David? Well, David is cut out a lot like his great granddaddy Judah. He's pulling some stuff, shall we say? He's a man of blood. He even kills another man who's a faithful, loyal lieutenant of his, selfless man, has him murdered so he can steal his wife. I wouldn't say David's not a good guy, we should say. He's an alpha male predator. And Uriah is put in the front of the line and put to death, right? And yet, the scripture says, David is a man after God's own heart. Well, how can we reconcile that? Because when confronted with his sin, like Judah earlier, but even much more so, David realizes that he's wrong on multiple levels. We'll get to that much later on.
Yeah.
If I'm still not retired at that point by the time we get to 2 Samuel. Where's the 2 Samuel, right? At the rate pace we're going right now, it might be 10 years out, right?
Oh boy.
All right, so... But Christ is fulfilling 1st and 2 Samuel too. It's absolutely amazing. Maybe we'll get there someday.
Well, another thing with the genealogy, Jesus is the king right through this.
Yes, he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Revelation 5. Yep, and many other places too. All right, so last thing, let's go quickly. Breakneck speed, and if you have any questions, you can. All right, so Judah and Tamar. Now let's recap this, knowing that Jesus is both in the line of the kings and he's also the kinsman redeemer. And let's bring it back to the text and we'll see how Jesus fulfills all this, right? So Judah's first two sons offend Yahweh. They're put to death. Judah sees the fault as a type of curse on Tamar and says, hey, you go back to your father's house and you wait there and I'll give you my son Shelah, however you say it. And he lies. He's putting her off. She takes matters into her own hands, right? He withholds his son. So he broke the cultural law at this point of the kinsman redeemer. He said he was going to do right by her, but he didn't do right by her, right? So Jesus fulfills the role of kinsman redeemer, right? How does Jesus do this? Well, he takes on our humanity. This is the incarnate, the enfleshment, Hebrews chapter 2, the Gospels, etc. In the incarnation, Jesus became our kin, right? That's why in the scripture we can call him not only Lord and God and King, but we can also call him, if you are so bold, brother, right? Well, first, he's the brother of the Jews by means of Israel, greater Israel, but also specifically of the line of the tribe of Judah. But he's also our kin as through the Gentiles, going all the way back in the genealogy, all the way back to Adam and Eve, right? He may not be you and I may not be, you'll have to have your genealogy tested, you have to look for your genes, but chances are, all you Germans here will not be in the lineage or the line of Judah.
Really?
Get the test. I don't know. Maybe you are. Maybe you're twice chosen. I don't know.
Yeah. Could be.
But we call him the second Adam or the last Adam. You can read about that in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. So he becomes kin for both Jew and for Gentile by taking on our human nature. We know from the scriptures that the wages of sin is death, as and Onan found out. There's a penalty to be paid for violating the Lord's will, Romans chapter 6. But the resurrection of the flesh is a redemption from the grave. So when you get to Easter, after Lent here, after you put on your sackcloth and your ashes, go to confession absolution, you go to Ash Wednesday, right? You go to your midweek penitential services, right? Easter follows Lent, right? The resurrection follows the cross and the grave, right? So he buys back his kin through resurrection. What do we want? People say, well, I want to go to heaven. Is that all you want? No. You want to be Casper, the friendly ghost up there playing on a harp that you can't touch? No. Woo, I'm on a cloud. I'm on cloud nine. No, you want to be raised from the dead, right?
You want your body.
You want your body redeemed. Absolutely. A physical creation that is good and very good. The very cosmos itself is redeemed. New heavens, new earth, new Jerusalem, new flesh, right? Okay, so he gives his life as a kinsman redeemer to redeem his kin, right? Jew and Gentile from sin, death, and the devil. You can see that on Good Friday. You can read about it in the Gospels. And even 1 Peter chapter 1 goes into this quite a bit. So what does a kinsman redeemer do? He sets aside what he wants, right? And he sacrifices himself for the good of his brethren, for those who are not even of his household, but for all of Adam's race. That's why the scripture talks about first for the Jew, but also for the Gentile. For the line of the patriarchs and their kinsmen or their kinfolk, but also going further back in the genealogy, even if you're not related to Abraham, we're all related through Adam and Eve, right? And through Noah and his sons and their wives, right? 8 souls in the ark, Genesis 6 through 9. So Jesus then fulfills the cultural legacy and the demands of the law as fulfilled in the office of kinsman redeemer. Now, if you want to find a specific passage about kinsman redeemer in the law, you can enjoy Leviticus chapter 25. Leviticus is a lot of fun. People normally, they push it off to the side and they say, I've never read Leviticus, and I'm glad because it's extremely complicated, but there's whole commentaries written on the book of Leviticus, and it explains it all. Why it isn't arbitrary. There isn't something in the book of Leviticus that's an accident, like God is just stumbling through it. No, every single thing in the rituals of Leviticus the book is fulfilled in the person and the works of Jesus of Nazareth, who is Messiah. And then, of course, as you mentioned earlier, the book of Ruth, Boaz serves as kinsman redeemer. Remember, Ruth and Naomi, her mother-in-law, they suffer. They're in another land. They're of Moab. there's a death, right? Death of both Naomi and Naomi's son, her and Ruth. Again, no Social Security, no public housing, no welfare benefits, no unemployment benefits. They have to go back to Naomi's household, or actually she encourages Ruth to, you should go back to your household, to your family line in Moab. I will go back to mine. But she says, no. Basically, she says, you're my family, right? Your family is my family. Your God is my God. And God takes that act of faith and he actually brings Christ through, yes, Boaz, Ruth. And who's before Boaz? And I'll end with this. Perez,
Okay.
one of the two twins, who is of Judah and Tamar. So God takes Judah's sin and he brings about the Messiah. God takes Jacob's sin, brings about the Messiah. Everyone's sin, he's working through the sin, and he brings forth the promise made all the way back, Genesis chapter 3, the offspring that is from Eve's own body. Speaking of Mary, who's the new Eve? Mary is the new Eve, who is also of Judah's line. Joseph is of Judah's line, so Jesus is adopted through Judah's line, but he's also of the flesh of Judah's line through his mother. Right. Whew. That was a lot.
Yeah.
Any final questions? We're 5 minutes after. Boy, we got a whole chapter in there.